The San Francisco 49ers are currently amidst a financial restriction, at least that is according to Kyle Juszczyk. We will dive into some of the comments that he made after signing with the San Francisco 49ers after being released, kind of looking around and deciding to come back. So we'll talk about a little nugget he dropped and why I think it's kind of what we already knew, but I think it does kind of explain this offseason, especially the free agent period, a little bit more so that we can kind of rationalize the moves and or lack of moves that fans had wanted to see the San Francisco 49ers make. So we'll talk about that. We also have the pro day circuit going on right now, and John Lynch along with it was like 8 other personnel, execs, scouts are taking it in. And we'll talk about some prospects that could absolutely be on the board at 11 or even for a potential trade back scenario. So we'll talk about that on today's show. But you guys already know what to do. They're already doing it in the chat. Drop an SDS, smash that like button, and let's talk all things San Francisco 49ers right now. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it. What is going down, Sourdough Squad? And right on cue, Bucko Sports says Parag Marate has entered the chat. And the reason why I'm laughing at that probably has to do with the title of the show, kind of what Kyle Juszczyk had been speaking about. But again, he did say something that really stood out to me. We'll just hop right into it and get into that. We'll talk about what's going down with the pro day and all that good stuff. But, I think we could all sense that the San Francisco 49ers are kind of working off a new set of constraints, I guess you could say. A new set of circumstances, because I think in the past, the 49ers have been big spenders, cash spenders, and they've gone over the cap multiple times. They've kind of overextended themselves multiple times in the pursuit of a championship. And I don't think any 49er fans faulted them for that. I think we all kind of sat back. It's not our money. And if you're a 49er fan, what do you want to see? You want to see the San Francisco 49ers stockpile talent. You want to see them bring in the, big name free agents and, contribute and put together a roster that would compete for a Super Bowl. So I don't think any fans were upset by this information, to seeing all that spending being done. But I think with what Kyle Juszczyk had mentioned, it does appear that the 49ers have taken a turn. And I'll just kind of read a quote kind of summarizing what he was saying when he joined Sirius XM NFL radio to kind of discuss his return to the San Francisco 49ers. And shout out to Coach Yak for grabbing this one. He says, it was just something that they put on my radar, and this is basically alluding to him being released and going out and looking for. It was something that they put on my radar and something that I needed to be prepared for. And what Kyle Juszczyk is talking about, a potential pay cut. And just as things went on, just the optimist in me started telling myself that, man, I don't think we're going to have to do this. It's getting close to actual free agency period. I haven't heard too much. Things are kind of looking good. Effectively, what he's saying is, I haven't heard anything. I think I'm going to make I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it through. I'm going to clear the potential, cost cutting situation, and I'm going to be on this roster next year. So in his mind, he thought that he was good. Like he's like, "Oh, wow, we made it. We're back, baby." And then he goes on to say, "But then then finally a couple days before that were like, yeah, this is a real thing. The financial restrictions we're under are a real thing." And so that's the thing that like really stood out to me about the Kyle Juszczyk interview and what he'd mentioned. And to me, it's someone who's close to the situation finally just saying what we all can see. Like we saw that the San Francisco 40, they made another signing last night. They signed gosh, I think it's Tyler, my guy Tyler in the chat to be able to correct my pronunciation. Um, he said we signed Saron Neal, who is a special teams player, a guy who's been in the league for a while. He's like 30 years old, kind of an older veteran coming in on, I didn't see the details of the deal yet, but they're not going to be, overly expensive, and you can kind of see they signed Richie Grant to a 1-year deal, Jason Pinnock to a 1-year deal, Trey Brown. They bring in, the most expensive free agent that they paid was Luke Farrell, who is a piece that they do need for their offense. They need a blocking tight end as much as people want to push back on that. They signed Demarcus Robinson, and they let a lot of their defenders go. So we're kind of looking around like, why does it feel like they're not adding potential players who could benefit the San Francisco 49ers and the roster in the future? Well, like I said, Kyle said the thing out loud. He said, and this is him paraphrasing someone who is handling the negotiation, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that's John Lynch he's paraphrasing, if that's Parag, if that's someone else that they work for, but whoever was having this conversation with Kyle Juszczyk about where the 49ers are currently at financially, Kyle is saying that the person said to him, "Yes, this is a real thing. The financial restrictions we are under are a real thing." So that coincides and realigns with that article that Mike Silver had put out right before free agency began. It was kind of like the primer to free agency, right? It dropped, I think, the weekend before free legal tampering period began. It identified a shift inside the 49ers organization, and Kyle effectively said it. The financial restrictions we are under are real. And that is coming from someone on the business ops side of things. So it's just interesting. I think we could all see that. I think we can all rationalize and see that the 49ers weren't interested in paying Jordan Mason. The Jordan Mason trade became official today. 5th round pick swap. They get an additional 6th. I still don't love the value of the trade. I don't think it's a trade that was made to recoup the most value. It was a trade that they made to not pay Jordan Mason. So that's a different thought process that I have personally seen from this organization since Kyle and John have taken over. To me, they strike me as guys who always want to win the deal. They always want to come away with the best return on a trade. It's very rare that you see them, what I perceive, take a loss on a trade. But that's the thing, is that the trade wasn't made to recoup the best return on Jordan Mason possible. It was to get out of his contract. It was to get out of that money, ship him away, and say, we appreciate you, Jordan. We're just not going to pay you. And because of that, we will take whatever anyone's willing to offer because we want to offload that deal. So to me, that is in line with the financial restrictions conversation. And for me, it's just a recalibration of what I have come to expect from this front office. For me, it has been, I expect this front office to wheel and deal, get the best return on a trade, and add talent to the roster. Obviously, with what we've seen, it's been a bit of a deviation from that, and it is what it is. And so Kyle Juszczyk goes on, he says, and they put it in my court whether I wanted to be released or if I wanted to continue to try and negotiate a pay cut. As we know, Kyle Juszczyk was released so he could go test the market. Juszczyk goes on to say, I think just to put it in the simplest terms, at the end of the day, it was too much to leave home. I wanted to be a Niner, and we were able to get a number that I was comfortable with. And then we were able to make the deal, and I couldn't be happier. And I'm trying not to look back at all. I'm just happy to be here, and know I'm locked in for 2 more years. So I found that piece to be a little bit interesting. Again, just to continue to, like, when with the Mike Silver report, it's not like the team comes out and goes, yeah, we're confirming this report, or you know what, this article is right or this article is wrong. It kind of is left up to, I don't know, people like me, other media members and fans, just to be able to discern for themselves. Is this accurate? Is this not accurate? I think there's truths and also things that aren't accurate that come out sometimes. It's just how it goes. But at the end of the day, I think we do see that there is a clear change in how business is currently being done with the 49ers. And we'll see what that leads to. Does that lead to the 49ers being competitive next year? Does it lead to them being competitive in the NFC West? Does it lead them to paying Brock and extending George? I think those are all questions that we'll continue to ask until it gets done. So again, nothing too surprising, but I think it was worth noting and something to discuss. But moving forward from that situation, it is also draft time. I think with free agency starting to slow down, and where things are headed, it is now time to kind of refocus, recalibrate a little bit on the draft. There are still some signings to be had. There are still players out there who could potentially add on to the 49ers. Like we talked about, the 49ers signed a veteran special teamer cornerback last night. So there's still moves to be made. But it is definitely something that we will start focusing on the draft a little bit more. And one of the key elements from today is John Lynch and a bunch of San Francisco 49er scouts and executives were on hand for the Oregon Pro Day. The Pro Day circuit is going on right now. I'll be at Stanford's Pro Day tomorrow to cover that. So that will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if anyone, flies down from Oregon to Stanford. I remember when I covered Stanford TCU, Josh Williams was there along with, I would say, 4 or 5 other scouts at Stanford versus TCU. So I would imagine there'll be a pretty good representation at Stanford's Pro Day tomorrow. it'll be interesting to see, like I said, if John Lynch will be there at his alma mater. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if he was. So we'll see. But let's talk about what happened today with John Lynch being on hand for Oregon's Pro Day and some potential players that they could pick up. Now there's a ton of Oregon players, but I think there's a couple that stand out to me. And I think the biggest one that honestly stands out is Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle, 6'4", 313 pounds. I'm sure if you have been tracking draft coverage, you have heard this name. This has been a guy. he was actually he was actually a mock draft 1.0 alum. But the problem is that PFF had him in the third round. So again, PFF's rankings are suspect at best, but it is a great mock draft simulator, so I do love to use it. But I also recognize in real time that sometimes their rankings just aren't great. So I've mocked Harmon to the 49ers in 1.0. But that's why I also called that particular mock draft the riser mock, because I expected nearly every single player that I drafted to rise. And so Harmon, he was there at 75, so I took him. But ultimately, this guy will probably be a first round draft pick. I would be surprised if Harmon falls into the second round. It could happen, but the way that I'm looking at it is you kind of have your Mason Graham tier, and then you have a tier currently below that, which is Walter Nolan. I think Harmon is one of them for interior defensive tackles. So it's going to be really fascinating to see if the 49ers try to target a guy like this at 11, or would they trade back a couple picks, maybe add a day 100 pick or two, or a top 100 pick or two, and trade back. I think, he could be an option at 11, but I would love this pick even more if they traded back a little bit and then got him. I think that would be pretty solid value, and again, allow you to continue to add more players through the draft, because as it's currently slated, I believe they have 11 draft picks. And I do think that they could probably use up to 15 just based on looking at the roster and how it's currently constructed. So a trade back might make a ton of sense, more than it's ever made, after getting through the free agency period. That's one of the things that we talked about in the lead up to the draft. Is mock drafts before free agency are just, I use them as a way to identify certain players and slot them into certain value ranges and just kind of go through the exercise. But now that free agency is kind of completed and we have a better idea of team needs, who's going to be drafting for need, who's going to be drafting BPA, it kind of makes that a little bit more clear. And so it kind of puts the value into, I think, a more digestible spot. So a guy like Harmon, he to me seems like a great trade back candidate. Um, that's kind of where I'm at with him. We'll see how high he ultimately goes, but I would like him in a trade back. Another guy that is solid is Josh Connerly Jr., 6'5", 311 pounds. He's very athletic. He's kind of like Armand Membo in a sense, but just on a different tier level. Um, I've hopped into Membo's tape and I'm just blown away by like how really good he is. I have watched Connerly. They have some similarities in regards to their athleticism, but I would say Membo is a much more technically sound offensive lineman. Um, Connerly strikes me as a a solid option at tackle. Um, yeah, for me, I have, while I was in Mobile and I filmed it and I watched Connerly go flying through the air, um, from Mike Green with that one-on-one rep. Granted, I understand that one-on-ones, although I love them as a former offensive lineman, I know it's not necessarily just like ultra representative of play on the field. It's a different beast, um, because you like the defensive lineman, that they know it's a pass rush. It's a pass rush. So they're not thinking anything other than pass rush. They're on an island, right? They're not worried about getting chipped. They're not worried about, the guard sliding over. So it's, you know, take one-on-ones with a grain of salt. I love one-on-ones though. They're a lot of fun. Um, but Connerly, wasn't his best rep. But I think he's a solid offensive lineman. I think his sweet spot is probably in the second round. Maybe where the 49ers are picking at 43. Um, I don't know if I love him at 43. Uh, just because at 43, I think I need someone to still be able to play right away, and there's no guarantee that Connerly can play left tackle or that he'll beat out Colton McKivitz. And I know that there is a contingent of 49er fans who just believe Colton will get replaced by anyone that they bring in. But I do think it is important to remember that the newest left tackle for the Chiefs could not beat out Colton McKivitz at right tackle. So just keep that in mind. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But Connerly could be an option, I would say, more so in the second round. Terrence Ferguson definitely is an interesting prospect. He's a talented prospect. He's got good size at tight end, 6'5", 243 pounds. He's an athletic, kind of. He's good route runner. He's good hands. He's a good receiving tight end. I haven't done a deep dive on his blocking ability, but just watching him at the Senior Bowl and watching how he moves really well. So I'd be interested to see if the 49ers would actually be interested in him. I'm not really sure because he strikes me kind of as like a third round tight end. And again, trying to match up 49ers needs. Um, I don't know if a third round tight end is like that's, you know, probably a little bit better of a receiving threat than a blocking threat. Would see the field a whole bunch as a rookie. And I think that's just where we're at with the 49ers is they need someone that can step on the field and contribute right away. So we'll see if that ultimately lands on being a guy like Ferguson. But I think I've seen a lot of fans talk about Jeffrey Bossa, the linebacker, who kind of has those, Dre Greenlaw skill sets. Very athletic, very fast. Um, a guy who can, cover and stuff like that. So Bossa is an interesting one. I'm curious to see where he goes in the draft. I kind of have him as like a day 2 guy, probably third round. um, because of his athletic profile. I think the thing that will intrigue people is his speed and uh, how well he plays, or like how well he moves and things like that. So I kind of have him day two, third round kind of a guy. We'll see where he ultimately goes. You guys know that I'm super high on Teddy Buchanan. I think Teddy Buchanan is a more complete Mike linebacker where he offers more athletic upside. Um, but for me, like if you had to say, who are you picking, Teddy Buchanan or Bossa? I'm still picking Teddy Buchanan. Um, so that's just where I'm at with it. Um, oh, this is an interesting question. How does Harmon compare to former Ducks defensive lineman? So that triggers to me like, how does he compare to Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner, right? That's at least that's what kind of what comes to my mind. Um, with him, he's definitely not like the sheer size, right? Like he doesn't he's like 6'4", I believe it is. Um, but he's got good explosive get off. He has good first step quickness. He's a guy to me who seems stout in the run game, can hold up blockers, can shed blockers relatively well. Um, Again, it's hard for me to compare him to those guys because those two are such different archetypes. But he does seem like a very disruptive, penetrating defensive lineman. He seems like a guy who is going to make his living just really making guard and centers' lives uh, not great, not great at all. So I don't know if I can compare him to those types of guys. And I'm trying to think who else, what other Oregon defensive linemen can come out. The ones that come to my mind are Eric and Defoe, and he's just in a different he's a different build. He's a different archetype. Uh which I don't think is a bad thing. Let me do a quick search in the NFL. What other defensive linemen? Brandon Dorless came out last year. I was not a big fan of Brandon Dorless. That will actually lead me to one of our next prospects, which was um, Jordan Birch. So, Kayvon Thibodeau. Yeah, I'm thinking more interior defensive tackle. Um, than edge. Uh, I'm looking down the list right now. There's nothing that really jumps out from anyone that I'm like, oh yeah, this is. So I'm gonna say like he's kind of in a class of his own, because he's got a similar talent tier as Eric Armstead. They're just different. They're different archetypes. He's a little bit more compact. I would say probably a little bit more explosive. Um, but when I was scouting Brandon Dorless, I came across Jordan Birch. Jordan Birch is very intriguing to me because he is very athletic. He's like, what is he, like 6'4", 6'5"? Um, he gets knocked for his weight a little bit because I think he's sub 300, but he's like in the 290s range. Um, but his speed and power really stand out to me. Um, they got him listed at 6'6", 295. I don't know if that's really what he if his real measurables are. I think I'd have to check the combine measurables. But this guy ran a 4.67. 4.67 at what looks like 280 pounds. So he's kind of like an inside out edge, kind of like reminds me of a Yetur Gross Matos, Charles Omenihu, Arden Key, just for frame of reference. But he has a real high athletic profile. Um, so he's just fast. Like he got clocked at running 21 miles an hour. He's just a freak that can play, I believe, could play wide nine and kick all the way down into the three tech. So Birch, though, I think has dealt with injuries, and I think Hendricks has kind of alluded to it. He's been a little bit inconsistent, um, but from a just a raw prospect perspective, I'm pretty intrigued. Tez Johnson is another guy. I'm pretty much out on Tez Johnson. Not because necessarily um because of his 40 time, but because the 49ers already have what's his name? We drafted him last year, Jacob Cowing. So uh, I don't think they need to double down and go with another Jacob Cowing archetype. I think they got that guy already on the roster who's faster. So I'm just out on Tez. Tez might be a good wide receiver in the NFL when it's all said and done. I don't think the 49ers necessarily need a player like that currently. And then you got Jordan James, running back. I'm not too familiar with Jordan James. I haven't really watched him, so I can't give you too much on him. But he's kind of projected to be a mid to late round pick. We do know that the 49ers are probably going to be in the market for a running back, and we'll see. Hendricks is saying good things about him. Let me do a quick little search on him. They're saying he's 5'10", 205 pounds, ran a 4.55. I mean, obviously, just we're not can't judge players solely on 40 times. He rushed for over 1,200 yards, 5.4 carry, 15 rushing touchdowns, 26 receptions, 209. That's pretty solid production. And he's only 20 years old. He'll be 21 soon. But that's really good production for sure. So he's definitely worth. He's ranked as high as 62nd overall by The Athletic and as high as 197 by PFF. That is a huge gap in ranking. That's crazy. Some have him in the top 100 or right around 100. Some have him at 121. NFL has him at 127. PFF's like, nah, you're a seventh round draft pick. said, I haven't watched him too much, so I can't really give you a strong uh, eval on him. However, production is interesting. It's worth taking a look. And, there's a lot of 49er scouts on hand. So who knows? Maybe they come across something where they go, who is this guy? And, I'm sure they already have an idea of who he is. Um, but will be interesting. Ray says rank Alexander, Harmon, to- Toia, Caldwell, Stackhouse. All right. Let's see. I'm going to go Harmon at 1. I'm going to go Harmon at 1. Right after him, I'm going to go Darius Alexander. Darius Alexander has probably made arguably some of the most money throughout this pre-draft process. Um, he has like, I mean, I'm assuming that he showed up to the Senior Bowl as a relative unknown. Um, and they're talking about him being a potential first round draft pick. And that's a guy who he flashed for me day one of the Senior Bowl. I was like, who's number 9 from Toledo? Because holy Toledo, he's balling. And he's an inside out guy. He can rush from the outside, he can rush from the inside. So he's an interesting prospect as well. So I'd go Harmon Alexander. I haven't watched Stackhouse. I haven't watched uh, Toia, but I would put Jamari Caldwell, another Oregon guy, um, behind Alexander. Jamari, Caldwell would be a solid mid round. Like if you could get Caldwell in like the 5th round, like that could be a solid pick. Or you get Caldwell in like the 6th round, that could be also a very solid pick. He might get knocked for his size because he's like 6'1", 6'2". But he's a load. Like he's a big boy. He's a wide body. Uh, we call those guys like coffee cans with legs. Um, he's he's a big body guy. He's a squatty body. Um, but Caldwell, I think, is underrated. You get him in the 5th or 6th round. Um, I would definitely be intrigued by that. I think he has definitely the potential to outperform his draft slot. CBS has him ranked at 66. ESPN has him ranked at 151 to kind of give you the gap in there. Um, have I seen Ty Robinson, defensive line out of Nebraska? Yes, he was actually a mock draft 3.0 alum. The only problem is that PFF had him available in the 7th round, which to me doesn't make sense. If I had to guess, Ty Robinson, he feels like an early day 3 guy with the potential to actually sneak into day 2. It's hard to look past, and I might not even be doing him well. He might be a 3rd round pick, honestly. Um, because when you're 6'5", 288 pounds, and you run a 4.83 40, and you're in the 85th percentile in broad jump as a defensive tackle, I mean, he's pretty solid. He had 7 sacks last year, 37 tackles, 21 of those were solo, forced fumble, and he stood out to me at the Senior Bowl. He doesn't seem like a flashy type of defensive lineman. Um, he's kind of he's a lunch pail guy. He's a he's it's going to be a long day in the office kind of a guy going up against him. Like I said, I don't think he's like old. I don't think he's very explosive, even though he does test well. Uh, but it will be fascinating to see where he goes. Like, for example, the NFL has him ranked at 77th. PFF has him ranked at 241st. That's the hard thing with PFF rankings is they're just so low on obviously talented players that you're just like, what's the thought process? Why is Ty Robinson uh 241st overall? That's damn near undrafted. So I don't see that. Um, so to me, if I had to, I'd put him right around 100, most likely. So, um, I'll watch Robinson's tape. I'll admittedly haven't watched a lot of his tape. I just watched him at the Senior Bowl. Um, he was a guy that I was definitely paying attention to at the Senior Bowl. I wanted to kind of come away with a strong feel for him. But I definitely do need to do a little bit more of a deep dive. Yeah, the mock draft boards are just it's like they half of them makes like half of their ranking makes sense. And then the other half, you're just like, well, how did you get to that conclusion that you think that guy is ranked there? So um it's interesting. Um let me pose this question to you guys. Um, who do you think the 49ers are taking first? Or maybe let me pose it this way first. What do you think is the most likely outcome? Is the most likely outcome that the 49ers pick at 11, or do they trade out and try to obtain more picks? I I'm kind of leaning towards a trade back, to be honest. I mean, think about the last time the 49ers took a defensive lineman in the first round, they still traded back, Javon Kinlaw. Um, I know many of you remember who was taken in that trade back for the Bucks that I'm sure many 49er fans wish they had. Because I literally hear it all the time. Um, but based on what you guys are seeing, I'm seeing trade back, stay at 11, pick 11, trade back. I don't know, man. This top 10 is fascinating to me because it's moving. The boards are moving. Daniel Jeremiah put out a mock draft today, and Tet McMillan went at 22. Like McMillan has been a top 10 lock, and then quietly, we're starting to hear these murmurs that, oh, the league might not be as high on him. The league might not be as high on him. And then bang, Daniel Jeremiah puts McMillan at 22 to the Chargers. I was like, oh, snap. Let's see what he got the 49ers in this one. He did. Let's go from top to the Niners. So, like I said, this is Daniel Jeremiah's recent mock draft 1.0. Titans go Cam Ward. I mean, it definitely feels like Cam Ward is definitely going to be the first pick overall. I would also assume that Abdul Carter would be the second. It's either going to be, I don't know. Do you think the Cleveland Browns will try to trade up for Cam Ward? I think Shedeur Sanders to the Cleveland Browns is an absolute disaster. I don't think that should happen. But I'm curious to see how desperate Cleveland is, and if they would try to get Cam Ward somehow, or if they just sit tight and they somehow believe that the Titans go for Abdul Carter. But it really does feel like a team with a new general manager, I believe a new general manager. Yeah, they fired Rand Carthon. A new general manager, I believe a new head coach, might be looking to get their quarterback. But then you get Abdul Carter to go on the opposite side of Myles Garrett. Sheesh. I've been dreaming of something like that with Nick Bosa. Just hasn't happened. Shedeur Sanders to 3. I don't love it. I feel like if there's anyone who could survive New York, it's probably Shedeur. Travis Hunter at 4 would be interesting to see. Jalen Walker has him listed as an edge. He also plays off-ball linebacker out of Georgia. He's one of the freakier athletes in this class. Ashton Genty just feels like a hand glove fit with the Raiders. We'll see, though, if the Raiders actually want to go running back with that pick. Armand Membo, who has been mocked to the San Francisco 49ers many times. I mocked Membo in my last mock draft. He's the real deal. Like, he's for real. If he went ahead of Will Campbell, like, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't. As much as Will Campbell has been my offensive line one throughout this ride, when I did my deep dive on Membo, I came away like seriously questioning who is going to be my O-line one when it's all said and done. But Will Campbell and Membo, they're tied right now. They're staring each other at the face. I can't decide who I want to put ahead because Membo is just so athletically gifted and so technically sound. You guys know I'm a stickler for technique. I believe that if you have technique at this level of college, that is what will help you translate to the NFL level, and it allows you to mitigate opposing edge rushers because you have the technique to counteract their pass rush moves. So that's the way that I look at it. Mason Graham is kind of in that category of a guy who's kind of been falling a little bit, right? Like, people are like, is Mason Campbell really that good? Should Mason Campbell be top 10 lock? Because before, Mason Campbell was a top 5 lock. Now we're toying with the idea, well, does Mason Graham, does Mason Graham fall out of the top 10 and land in the 49ers lap? Honestly, that would be fantastic. That would be ideal, but I don't know if that will happen. Then you've got Jahad Campbell, Alabama linebacker who goes to the Saints, and then Will Campbell going to the Bears, and then San Francisco 49ers taking Jahdae Barron. I'm curious, how would you feel about the notion of the 49ers drafting a defensive back at 11 when all they have added in free agency for the most part has been secondary? Trey Tomlinson claimed off waivers, Trey Brown signed, Richie Grant signed, Jason Pinnock signed. We just had another DB signed yesterday. How would you feel about this? Jahdae Barron, I can't give you. He's a guy that I haven't got to yet, so he's on my list of guys that I need to watch. I have a long list of guys that I need to watch. I'm getting through it. This next month is it's like draft crunch time. I got to study for the test. I got a lot of studying to do when it comes to these prospects. So Barron, I know I have a first impression of him. I know high level what he is, but you guys know I like to get into the tape. I like to dive. I like to dive in. I haven't done the dive yet, so I could go in and be completely blown away and be like, yeah, this is the guy. So we'll see, but I don't know if cornerback. I don't know. Over guys like Will Johnson. I mean, 49ers beat reporters love talking about Tyler Warren to the San Francisco 49ers. I just don't understand the logic. I understand that Tyler Warren is a good player and a really, really good player at that. But if Tyler Warren were coming out last year, he would be the second tight end. He to me, he's not in the same tier as Brock Bowers. Like Brock Bowers, in my opinion, was truly a generational tight end. And I'm not sure I see that with Warren. Now, that doesn't mean Warren couldn't be an all-pro one day. That's a different. Being a generational tight end prospect is much different than being a potential future all-pro. But that's kind of where I'm having like a hard part with that element of it. Is he's not as good as Brock Bowers. I don't think at all. I think he's a complete teardrop below. And then on top of that, you have Kittle, and you just signed Luke Farrell to be a backup tight end for $11 million guaranteed. So the only way that I can rationalize drafting Tyler Warren to make it make sense is you're moving on from Kittle. Like Kittle's going to play the last year of his deal. You're going to let him hit free agency, and you have your Kittle in waiting in Tyler Warren. That's really the only way that I can rationalize it, because again, drafting a player at 11 to play behind George Kittle, like, yes, in theory, it would be phenomenal to have those two tight ends on the field all the time. But Will that be the case? What's the point of paying Luke Farrell if you're going to have Tyler Warren? So, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So that's the only thing that I've really had a hard time with Warren is more so I don't love it at 11, and I also don't love the logjam at the position. Gray Zabel going as high as 16. Oh, my dreams. My dreams, my dreams, my dreams, my dreams of Gray Zabel. He is not going to be there in the second round. He's going to be phenomenal. He's super good. Mike Green, 17. Colston Loveland, 18. Easy E making some money. He's kind of a smaller defensive end, but very solid. Omarion Hampton has made a lot of money this draft process. Some people even have him ahead of Genty. Jackson Dart has made a lot of money. The dream scenario for 49er fans is Jackson Dart somehow makes it his way into the top 10 conversation. That's really the hope. And then again, we talked about Tet being at 22. Maxwell Harrison had a phenomenal combine performance. He gets elevated into the first. Nicky Monwari, phenomenal NFL combine. They kind of have him in the 20s. Kelvin Banks Jr. at 25. Trey Amos, Ole Miss cornerback at 26 to the Rams. Derek Harmon, who we've been talking about with the 49ers being in Oregon today for their pro day. This is kind of why I mentioned like he would be a great trade back target. DJ has him at 27 to the Ravens. Michael Williams. I think my view of Michael Williams is a little bit skewed because I've only watched him go up against Armand Membo, and Membo did not have a struggle in the world going up against Michael. Azarie Thomas in the first. I hate this, but I love it at the same time. I'm a big fan of Azarie Thomas. I would love for the San Francisco 49ers to take him, even if it meant taking him at 43. But he seems like he's made too much money that he might be gone for consideration at 43. As you can see, he's flirting with the first round right now. And then you have Kenneth Grant, who's another good defensive tackle, kind of in that Harmon, Walter Nolan kind of tier. Josh Simmons, great offensive lineman. Injury concerns with him. And then you got Shamar Stewart, who some believe could go as high as 10 with his Senior Bowl performance, compounded with his scouting Senior Bowl. It's not Senior Bowl. Scouting combine performance. Some believe he could go as high as top 10. Seems like the lack of production is going to kind of keep him down a little bit. And as you can see, no Walter Nolan. So Walter Nolan officially out of the first round. And so my read on the Walter Nolan situation is you can see in mock 2.0, here he is at 12 for DJ in mock 2.0. And so the way that I'm looking at this is that the talent isn't the issue with Walter Nolan. and something tells me DJ is caught in wind of maybe some of the off-field concerns, which is why he's completely out of 3.0. So that is something that you have to consider. It's one of the hard things of not being able to talk to these guys, because that is a huge part of the evaluation, is what kind of person are they. Not every single player loves football. Not every single player is going to put maximum effort into being the best they can be, and not everyone's going to take it seriously. And when you give guys like that a lot of money, sometimes they're just not professionals, and they don't take it seriously. They take the paycheck and they just go through the motions. And so that's one of the hardest parts of scouting, is how do you find the guy uh as a talent, but also the football character matches. So my read on why Walter Nolan went from 12 in 2.0 to completely falling out isn't talent related. He's talented. I think we could all see that. Like, Walter Nolan is a very talented player. What strikes me is that I'm assuming it's probably a character concern issue. Um, I'll give you guys one resource, and it's worth much more than a $2 super chat, but you guys ask me all the time. So I'll give you a solid resource. Search up Caddy's cut ups on Patreon. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. Um, Silent says, if Jalen Walker slips due to size, do you take him? I think you'd have to. I think you definitely have to consider it. Um, you'd have to consider it. You'd have to run it through, because he's such an electric athlete. Um, like he could be potentially like a Micah Parsons. There's a world that exists where Jalen Walker kind of is like a Micah Parsons kind of guy. Um, so yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think you'd have to consider it. But the thing is, where are you putting him? Are you putting him at off ball linebacker? Are you putting him at edge? I think you'd have to be extremely convicted on the player. So is he a situational pass rusher in the wide nine? Um, all things to consider. So we'll see, but definitely we're definitely kicking back up into the draft situation. Like I said, I'll be at Stanford's Pro Day. Um, it's going to be interesting because Andrew Luck will be speaking. He'll actually be having like a press conference before the Pro Day. And then the big prospect is obviously Alec Aomanor. I don't know how to say his name. So he is a wide receiver, probably be a day 2 pick. He has a lot of upside. Just had terrible quarterback play last year. So he's pretty much the guy that I'll be looking for. They have a defensive lineman, Tobin Phillips, O lineman, Levi Rogers, linebacker, Tristan Sinclair, and linebacker, Gathan Bernadelle. So those will also be guys that I'll be seeing if they are worthy of being potential 49ers draft picks. So I'll be on site tomorrow. That's where I'll be. And I'll be posting content as it comes through. Probably do like a live after the pro day. And we'll go from there. But appreciate everyone as always for tapping in. Do me a favor, smash that like button on your way out, and we'll keep talking 49ers football with you all, and I appreciate you guys. I'm out of here. Peace. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see you.